Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. There are fewer pleasures greater than hearing the sweet sound of a steel target being slammed by a bullet. Well, if you're actually able to hear it. My range recently made some welcome improvements to our shooting positions by enclosing them in a building. Cool when it's raining, snowing, or just plain cold. Unfortunately, at the 200-yard position, thanks to the geometry of the building compared to the range, a rifle's muzzle is often within the building when shooting. And that is a god-awful amount of noise and has the effect of covering up the sound of steel being hit. And thanks to the design of the steel targets, which are usually dark shapes further shrouded in shadow, and that's largely due to provincial regulations where I shoot, I often can't see the gongs register hits. How to solve that problem? Well, the Hornady hit target impact indicator claims to do just that. You just simply hang one of these on a target and start shooting. When you hit the steel, an internal sensor registers the indicator moving and a very bright red light starts flashing. What could go wrong with such a simple concept? As everything on this channel that I review, I purchased it myself, including these hit indicators. All right, forgive the lack of original packaging, but it's in a recycling plant somewhere. See how responsible we are at Redneck Preppy HQ? What you get in the package, however, is pretty basic. You get 2 of these Hornady hit target impact indicators, which is really a lot harder to say when you think about it. They contain non-user serviceable rechargeable batteries, which is very disappointing. You get 2 micro USB cords to charge them with. You got 2 rubber straps which you use to mount them to targets. They also give you some zip ties as an alternative method of doing so. And you get what passes for instructions. There are 2 sides to this, but really these are the instructions. I suppose you could probably freeze this and actually read this if you want. All right, gonna take you too much time. All of this for $35 Canadian or $18 in US currency. Now these are very simple devices. On one side you got yourself a power button. On the other side you have your micro USB charging port. On top, here we are, you've got yourself the charging indicator and you've got a low battery indicator. On the back of the unit you have yourself a clip which you can use to mount one of said rubber straps or USB or whatever the hell else you can think of in order to mount this to a target. Turn it on. You press and hold the power button for 5 seconds. I'm not sure why it takes so long, but here we are. It'll flash green for a couple of seconds. Now I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to issue a flashing light warning. So if you're epileptic or otherwise photosensitive, you may want to turn away. I will give you the all clear when you can turn back. And this is how bright it is. I'm not sure my camera is really actually capturing this. In person, if you were to look directly at this light while it's flashing, it will not hurt your eyes, but it'll certainly blind you momentarily. Okay, those of you who are photosensitive, you can turn away now. Now, didn't I say you got 2 of these indicators? Well, there's only one, Redneck. What happened to the other one? We'll get into that a little later. These things aren't rocket science, and they work pretty simply. After you've charged them up, you turn them on and then you mount them to the steel that you plan on shooting. Now inside is an accelerometer which detects bullet strikes on the steel, and when it does, it flashes a very bright red light that Hornady says that you can see up to 1,000 yards away. Now unfortunately I don't have access to a 1,000-yard range, so I'm gonna have to take the company's word for that. It blinks HIT in Morse code every time it registered a hit, which is a nice touch, and I have to admit it did make me smile. Now, to test the ones that I purchased, I figured I'd shoot steel at 200 yards, just far enough away that seeing the steel in a shady target shroud react to my hits would be difficult, but perfect in seeing the bright flashing red light. And sure enough, I saw the light flash with my first shot, and my second shot, and my third shot. And then I grew a little suspicious, because I'm not that good of a shooter to hit a small steel target at 200 yards with iron sights every single time. It turns out I actually didn't hit the damn thing once in those 3 shots. The earth-shattering 7.62 by 39 millimeter round was so powerful that it actually activated the hit indicator by striking the backstop. Well, eventually I actually did hit the steel, and I sussed out that when I missed, it would only flash a couple of times. But when I hit, it would flash for an extended period of time because the steel was actually moving. I have to say I was a little disappointed by this. That said, seeing the flashing red light at 200 yards was beyond easy, and I have no problem believing that in the proper conditions, you could probably see this several times further away. Now, unfortunately, I shot this footage with a GoPro, which I thought was going to clearly register the flashing light. So if you can't see it or can only just barely, well, you have my apologies for that. But take my word for it. You shouldn't have the slightest problem seeing the flashing light at least several hundred yards. In fact, here's Hornady's propaganda movie, which shows said flashing. Now, unfortunately, I only came away with 1 hit indicator after my range trip. Now, as you may have noticed, this indicator is about 1 inch square in all dimensions, and to mount it on the steel at my range, I had to hang it on the chains that hold the targets. That meant that the indicator was actually sticking out a little bit past the edge into the area where ricochets and bullet fragments would put it in danger. And the inevitable happened. The indicator was struck by something, probably a fragment, and it gave its life in service to this review. Escat in pace. What's a review without easily digestible lists of positives and negatives? Now, usually I go with cons first, but today we're going to go with positives. So pros, well, whatever else, this thing is stupid easy to use. You turn it on, mount it to the target, and the rest is up to you and your firearm. I'd say setup is easy, but there is none. Outside of charging it up and putting it on the rubber strap or zip ties or however you plan on mounting the indicator, there's nothing really to set up. Now, Hornady never mentions battery life, and I couldn't even find any information about what it was projected to be through use. But I had mine on for several hours and registering hits and non-hits, and the battery indicator wasn't flashing. I'm presuming you're going to get at least a few hours of use before you do actually have to recharge. Okay, now time for cons. Buckle up. Depending on your setup, it might not be possible to use these risk-free. I had no way of setting these up, at least from what was provided by Hornady, without putting them in the potential path of fragment strikes. The steel at my range uses at 200 yards isn't particularly thick, and when combined with the chains that they're attached to, it means that this sits slightly in the proverbial line of fire. There's also no way to set sensitivity. When I figured out that I wasn't the world's greatest shooter and wasn't hitting a nearly invisible 10-inch steel target at 200 yards every time, but rather the bullets were activating the indicator with non-hits, I checked the instructions to see if there was actually a way to dial down the sensitivity. No. Whatever the indicator's accelerometer is set to, that's what you get. Again, this is probably not a problem for most people, depending on how their steel targets are set up, but it was for me. In this day and age, to not use USB-C to charge something should actually be a punishable offense. I can get trash tier electronics from Guangzhou that employ USB-C, but Hornady goes with micro USB from 2007. Come on, man. And finally, these indicators are not expensive, but they're also not cheap enough to be expendable. That bullet fragment that ended the life of one of my indicators wiped out $20 of nearly useless Canadian dollars. Now, I'm not going to starve because of that, but even in today's economy, that is still money. I suppose it's time for my recommendation, though I have a feeling that I may have signaled which way I'm going on this. I really wanted to like the Hornady Hit Target Impact Indicator. Everything I review on this channel is something that I've bought, and usually because I want to solve a problem. So I want things to work. I do have to be careful about being overly invested in something to the point that I overlook its bad points in order to justify a purchase. But I think if you've been watching me for any length of time, I hope you believe that I try and be as balanced as possible. I believe that this will work for a lot of people, probably most people, but it didn't work for me. Due to the way that my range hangs steel targets, which I have to believe is also the way that of a lot of ranges hang steel, it wasn't possible to mount these impact indicators in a way where they wouldn't inevitably be struck, but also be visible. Now, it may be possible to create a mount that will actually work under recoil and also make these units safe from ricochets and bullet fragments. And I may experiment with different ways. Well, I've only got one, so that first experiment better work. I do have an idea that I do want to try next time, which should work. But I don't buy things to create projects, but rather solve problems. More importantly, there is no way to adjust the sensitivity. The very act of the bullets striking the backstop behind my hanging targets activated the impact indicators virtually every time. Now, for something that I bought specifically tell me when I hit, and by extension missed, well, that's unacceptable. I was able eventually to tell an actual hit from a miss, but again, this has one job to do. It shouldn't be my job to have to parse the results. It's either hit or it's miss. Again, it might not be a deal for others, but it was for me. So regretfully, I can't recommend the Hornady Hit Impact Target Indicator. Even if I manage to solve the issue of safely mounting it, the lack of a sensitivity adjustment makes it unreliable for my purposes. At any rate, I hope you found today's video at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope your trips to the range are fruitful. Take care, and bye-bye.